Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to a Friday Khutba talk. Uh, First, let me wish each and every one of you a Ramadan Mubarak. Kul aam wa antum bikhair. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this month a month that is full with blessings, forgiveness, mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the month of rahmah and maghfirah min Allah wa atqun min al-nar. And this is the month for us to reorient ourselves and purify our intention in the world. We are living in very unique and difficult circumstances. The circumstances that makes a Friday gathering in the mosque not possible in these days. It makes the possibility of having gathering to break fast together, iftar, to really see each other in Taraweeh on a daily prayer, very difficult. And I know many of us are feeling the possible communal spiritual vacuum that is there because there are some aspect of Ramadan and religion in general that is communal in nature, that is about building communities, brotherhood, sisterhood, extending the bonds of neighborhood and seeing each other on as often as possible. This is to be balanced with also the understanding that also Ramadan is a time of reflection on an individual basis. And these are not to be placed or to be thought in contradiction. One can still think and focus and desire to have a communal gathering with brothers, sisters, and community, while also partaking in what Ramadan calls upon us to have a path of self-reflection and taking ourselves into a serious account during this month. So the month of Ramadan in general, is to speak, is a purposeful month. It is for us to be a community and individuals of purpose. And one of the most important element of us being a community and individuals of purpose is to reorient our habitual daily practices. In general, we begin to move on life without thinking, without considering the actions that we take on a daily basis. Our morning routine becomes habitual. Our breakfast becomes habitual. The type and way and the place we get our coffee becomes habitual. Our greetings to others and engagement with others becomes habitual. So our self becomes really not a self that is connected to the world, being reflective of the world that's around it, being aware of not only of your innermost but also in the outermost in the world. So the month of Ramadan is about a reorientation of really a moment to waking you up from your habitual sleep. Now, it's understandable that the human being in general has a strike of laziness, that the self is lazy. Again, I'm not accusing you of being lazy, I'm just saying the self, meaning that part of the human being that is inclining to not actually being rigorous, being aware, being awake, being constant. So we begin to, as habits become imprinted on us, we become to individuals that lean on the habitual lazy self and not actually be energetic and undertaking what the world and what God wants us is to be individuals that are awake and aware and connected both to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala but the world that is around us. So in this sense, the month of Ramadan, when Allah says لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, and I said this last time that you may attain God consciousness, but how we actually articulate that God consciousness is, for me, is to be in a state of awakeness, to be in a state of actually purposeful engagement in the world. As you move and you walk in the world, that every step that you take and every direction that you are taking is being taken with a purpose and with understanding that you're connected both to the human family, you're connected to the world, because in essence, our body, where we are is from the world, and also to be connected to the unseen world and to be connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So taqwa is to have this consciousness and to be in a state of awakeness, rather than to resort to the part of ourselves that is lazy, that is habitual. So why we fast and rearrange ourselves is literally putting your own lazy self upside down and transforming your habitual self in a way that for the other 11 months that you have actually been almost going on a cruise control, unthinking, unreflective, and unpurposeful. Again, I'm not accusing, and I'm the furthest person to accuse any individual of any type of shortcomings. What I give myself and you is counsel, and I know some of you do engage in purposeful engagement, are reflective of the world. You have both a spiritual as well as physical engagement in the world to reorient yourself. So if you are a person that does this, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and continue to enable you to do these exercises, both spiritual and physical, and engage in the world as a purposeful, awakened human being in this sense. So the Ramadan for the individual is really to put you off your normal unthinking pattern. I often say to the individuals, just think about the place that you go get your coffee in the morning, the location where you park your car, the way you walk to your office and where you place your papers, the way you greet individuals, and all these elements that often we're on cruise control and no longer thinking in ways that are in essence reflect what a human being is. It's a living, breathing, constantly interacting human being. You also could think of the negative part. If you're going to the place where you get your coffee, and I know it's a Ramadan, and that's one of my challenges is I like to have my coffee in the morning, and therefore that for me is the biggest challenge in Ramadan. Food and all that is manageable. But think if you go to where you get your coffee and for whatever reason they misplaced your cream that you put in the coffee. You begin to be bent out of shape as if the end of the world has hit you. And immediately you go into sometimes of individuals that go into anger, and sometimes they begin to yelling at the person that is helping them and the person who's working in there as the worker, as if again that the world has changed on them. So again, this is for me is part of the challenge on the problem of the lazy self, the habitual self, the self that is that does not have reflection on its status and its position in the world, and has leaned to the material world without any other elements of spiritual pursuit or in essence being engaged in the world in that way. So as we enter into this to the month of Ramadan, and as we are beginning our practices that are obligatory for us to fast, to abstain from food, from drinking, from any elements, is what I want all of us is to begin to be individuals that actually are purposeful in our engagement in the world. And I know that in certain corners that there's what you call this modern age type of spiritual attainment. And again, if individuals are attaining and have derived some benefit from that, it's important. But I want to direct you to a very systematic tradition that we have in relations to Islam, and Ramadan is one of those institutions of providing us almost 30 days for us to reorient our program and our way of engagement in the world. So taqwa is to have God consciousness. Taqwa is to have awareness and be present in the world. Taqwa is to measure things in relations to right and wrong, and be, in essence, engaged in the world with your sense and antenna for both justice and rightness being there. Fourth, taqwa is about thinking of those that all around us that might not be both in the same position that we are in terms of material, but also in spiritual attainment and spiritual journey. And in here, I want also to counsel myself and you that don't look at the people with an eye of disdain or an eye of arrogance, just because you have attained some level of spiritual practice and have attained a particular notion of spirituality, or even success in the world as it's defined. Never look down at others, because what you attain can be immediately in a short period of time taken away from you. Not again, arrogance is one of the most damaging characteristics that an individual can have. And for those who would like to engage in much more systematic study, purification of the heart work, and some other writings that deals with some of these spiritual diseases that manifest itself in the world, and arrogance is one of those paramount. And it is not only those who are not spiritually trained that have arrogance, but also you have individuals that in the name of spirituality, in the name of religion, also manifest arrogance. And this is the calamity itself, where individuals who are supposed to know better, to actually practice spirituality better, to be individuals that represent the light of divine manifestation in the world, Nurullahi fil ard, Nurun ala Nur, that they actually partake in making themselves and their own self to be the center of attention and arrogance, and practice arrogance in the world. And I know part of the modern modes of communication, the whole notion of social media, and I'm sorry I am reaching out to you today on a medium of social medium, social communication and social connection, where sharing likes and sharing stories and images and so on actually have a very damaging effect on the soul and damaging effect on the self, because it tends to push the visible, the physical, the image part of the human being forward, and it tends to produce really a much more refined self that is enamored with its own self. one of the most destructive aspects relative to our spiritual attainment uh, is to actually become enamored with our own opinions, with our own self, and with our own image. And then we use other human beings as a way to really boast and elevate the self on a pedestal. So I know I'm speaking to you while simultaneously engaged in the calamity of this social medium as a mode of contemporary and modern communication, but I do so under circumstances, but also while aware that it does have its effect. So Ramadan is for us to actually be conscious of these elements and begin to put on practices that change and alter the direction of our own self in the world. So what for me again is what Ramadan means in relations to taqwa, and what taqwa means as breaking our lazy, habitual, unpurposeful, unconscious, unaware self, and change it into a self that is engaged, connected, alive, and being present, reflecting both the prophetic tradition as a practice and divine revelation to in the form of the guidance in the Quran. All the narration about the Prophet ﷺ, that he was a person that was present, that anyone that is encountered him with him and had an encounter with him, that he was present. He gave the people the attention that they needed. He attended to all of his affairs, consulted with people, never treated anyone with arrogance, always was patient with individuals, always complimenting individuals that did anything to him, remembering individuals' names, calling individuals, asking about them if they were missing from his immediate company, opening space for them to sit, complimenting as well as putting his hand on the head of their kids in a way to offer prayers or just a gentle touch for their children, remembering their name, giving counsel both to kids and adults. And one of the most beautiful stories of the old woman in Medina holding the hands of the Prophet ﷺ and walking with him, and he is walking with her to the market as she bought all her needs, and then the Prophet actually walked carrying her whatever she bought to her house. That again is a Prophet that is aware, awake, present, and understanding the meaning of taqwa, the meaning of God's consciousness. And again, I'm a very constant critic of spirituality that leads to arrogance, or spirituality that demands service of others to it or to those individuals. That spirituality should not be a person where we seek others to be subservient and extend or expect for them to do khidmah, to do service for us. If anything, that the status or a position of a person that is awake, that have a spiritual attainment, is for the individual to be the one who extend the service, because there is a blessing of serving others, and that is often the one of the first paths toward spirituality, is to engage and to partake in servicing others. So I really wanted just to give some few words from me on this first Friday of Ramadan. I know it is very difficult for all of us, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is basically is asking us to be awake and aware. Everything is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything is in creation is from Allah. The disease is from Allah. The cure is from Allah. The virus is from Allah. And the doctors who are trying to find medicine is from Allah. So in essence, everything in the world is from Allah. But for me, maybe I could put a reflection that before the virus, all of us were on the autobahn of worldly affairs, on the fast freeway of unconsciousness, the fast freeway of unattentiveness to both our own inner need and outer needs of humanity. We were all looking, possibly, whether reflecting of President Trump, as the statement says, كما أنتم يولى عليكم, as you are, your leaders are a reflection of who you are. And maybe everybody was paying attention more to the stock market ups and down, and that was the spiritual conversation of the material world dominating our inner consciousness. So it's also, we were in a state of unawareness and completely unconscious of our damage to the environment, that the animal world was in complete disarray, the seas and the fishing collapsing, the coral reefs are being destroyed. And it might be that Allah is asking us to come back into a state of awakeness. And one way is for us to go back to our homes and to our families in a state of going to the second, which is the residence, but the second also is a word that is related to the sukna, which is a state of tranquility. And some of the evidence shows that the world is experiencing, on the environmental dimension, a sense of tranquility. So it might be that we're having difficulty as a human beings because of what we reaped ourselves in the unconsciousness in our engagement in the world. But if you look at how both the animal world, the environment, and so on, it seems possibly they're actually having the spiritual gatherings in Ramadan for themselves, while we are locked up because we have not appreciated the world and our position and status in it. And as such, this Ramadan is for us to have a deeper reflection about it. I don't claim, again, for anyone to misunderstand me, I don't claim that I know exactly what is God is doing or telling. All what I know is I'm trying to reflect and understand and draw my own understanding. And all what I say is Allahu A'lam. Allah knows best. But it seems that from my observation, again, this is my personal observation, I don't have an iPhone or a technology to call God directly, but it seems that our own impact on the world does translate and does impact and have consequences, and we might be seeing some of those consequences. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us people that are awake, that are conscious, that are manifesting taqwa in its full manifestation understanding, that we ask Allah to make it possible for us to gather as friends, families, and relatives, and those that are in neighbors. And for me, all of humanity is my neighbor, and to make it possible for us to come back to a state of normal, but a state of normal that is far more nuanced and understanding in a deeper reflection on the world. So Jazakumullah khair. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you, bless your family, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring you all good health, and cause this Ramadan to be a one filled with deep reflections and understanding. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you the taqwa that you seek, and inshallah this will be a most blessed Ramadan. The Ramadan that you seek is the Ramadan that you find. No matter what the difficulties, the God of pre-COVID is the same God that is during COVID and post-COVID. What you need is to knock on the door of the divine in Ramadan, and you will find him. What you seek is what you find, and that is essentially the lesson and the message that I have for you at this first day of Ramadan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.